everyone. We are here at the Alabama Nature Center at our demonstration apiary, and it is a little breezy, a little chilly, but it is sunny and it is beautiful. There's not a cloud in the sky. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about bees in winter. So before we start talking about these friends that I have behind me, let's talk a little bit about our native bees. So in North America, there are 4,000 native bee species, and they have a lot of different winter adaptations. So when you think about native bees, you might think of the bumblebee. And so the bumblebee right now they're just queens that are out there, mated queens, and they are hibernating somewhere down in the leaf litter in the forest or a leaf pile or somewhere like that. And so they're probably all around you and you just may not be able to see them. So they're going to hibernate until the temperature warms up, and then they're going to come out and be able to lay their eggs and be able to start their new colony for the year. This means that if you have leaf piles or areas that have a lot of leaf buildup and you haven't cleaned it up yet, just leave it for right now until the weather gets a little warmer, because there might be some little bumblebees in there being dormant for the cold months. So some other bee species that we have here, solitary species, when you think about mason bees, leafcutter bees, those kind of bees, those are solitary bee species. And right now, a lot of those solitary bee species, they have two different ways that they will go through winter. So they might lay their eggs in the summertime, and if it's later in the summertime, those eggs are probably going to hatch out and be a larva, and they're probably in a dormant state, waiting to pupate completely until it's spring. So you won't have any adults. The adults die off and they leave their young, and their young will overwinter as pupa to hatch out in the spring. There is another strategy of solitary bees, and that is to complete their metamorphosis throughout the fall and actually make cocoons and overwinter as adults, and then hatch out of their cocoons in the spring as well. So the blue orchard mason bee is known for doing this. They typically are an early spring bee, so they hatch out and they start their process, and they continue on until they're an adult, but they're making their cocoon, and they're going to stay in the winter as their cocoon. So some cool things about some native bee species: we won't see them flying for a little while longer. But our non-native friend, the honeybee, it's a little different. So because they can create such large colonies this time of the year, there are no male bees. If you know something about honeybees, or if you've seen some of our other bee videos, you know that they kick out the male bees in the fall, so they don't have as many mouths to feed. And this is actually the winter generation. So the summer generation of honeybees, they spend all summer working hard to store up pollen and nectar and make honey, and that honey reserve is what they're going to feed on all during the winter. Now the cool thing is, and the sad part is that honeybees summer generation, they don't really get to take part in what they work so hard on. So summer generation bees have a very short lifespan because they essentially run themselves ragged during the summer making all this honey. The winter generation, their whole method for living is just to survive, so that they can help the queen in the spring with the new generation. So winter honeybees actually have a lot more fat reserves than summer honeybees, and so they use that to help keep them warm. But they also they use that as energy too, and so they take their flight muscles. They have really large flight muscles, and they vibrate their flight muscles and create friction and create heat to keep the hive warm. So they actually stay in a cluster really tight together, and all of the bees in the hive, they cluster together, they vibrate those flight muscles, they create a lot of heat. They actually can keep this hive at about 95 degrees. So if you were to be able to look at it with some heat vision, you would be able to see that this is really warm inside. And so they actually, in their cluster, They move in circles on to the way out. So the ones in the middle, they get warm enough, they move to the outside, they get cold, they move back into the middle, so they're always moving around. They're also doing this over any brood that's in there, so any babies, larvae, or anything like that, because those brood have to stay warm. They use propolis, which is sap. They collect it from trees, and they make something called propolis using that, and they use that to seal up any nooks and crannies in their hive, keep it really well insulated. And that's one reason why we don't go into the hives this time of year, because if we break that propolis seal, they'll have to spend all that time and work sealing it back up, and it might not be sealed before it gets cold again tonight, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to chill the brood and the bees inside. So they're able to stay active pretty much year-round, in a different level of activeness than their summer, compared to our native bees that actually just find ways to hunker down for the winter. Now, this time of year, it's cold right now. It's in the 40s. Flight typically happens about 55 degrees. There are some bees that are out and they're doing cleansing flights, so they don't use the bathroom inside their hive. So they're flying out to use the bathroom, go back in. They're not actively foraging. But when we have a sunny, warm day in winter, they will go out and they will look for pollen and nectar. And it's just some flowers and plants that you might not think about. When you look around, it looks gray, it looks barren, but there's things blooming. So this is one of those things. This is Henbit. You might have seen these little purple flowers in your lawn. You might have seen them on the side of roads. This is a really important plant for pollinators, especially here late winter, early spring. It grows everywhere. If you look closely, you'll probably find this in your yard. You might think of it as a pesky weed, but it is very helpful for our honeybee friends. They get a lot of pollen and nectar from this. Another plant is Kiss Me at the Gate, also called winter honeysuckle. It's a native bush, and it grows, the little flowers grow right on the stem before the leaves form. It has a really nice smell, and bees love it. Love it, love it, love it. And then there is, of course, my very, very favorite, which is the very versatile dandelion. So these are popping up everywhere in your lawn right now, and a lot of people think of them as a nuisance, but they have a lot of value for all different types of wildlife, especially pollinators, especially bees right now who don't have anything else. When it's nice and sunny and they want to go forage for something, they might be running low on their honey reserves. This is what they're going to go to. They can get pollen and nectar from the dandelions. So keep these in your yard. Don't mow them over or spray them with pesticides or anything like that, because they're very, very helpful. So as a beekeeper right now, we're checking the hives by just lifting them up. If they're really heavy, we know they still have plenty of honey. If they're not, they might be running low. We typically give them some sugar water just to help them through this time of year, because they can starve really easy because they're burning an awful lot of stuff by generating all of that heat. But we're not actually going into the hives right now because they need to stay warm. And for our native bees, we're just keeping an eye out, waiting for some of the early spring species to emerge. Keeping leaf piles undisturbed. Some like to put their pupa or their cocoons in leaf stem or plant stems, hollow stems. So when you deadhead or anything like that, you could be, don't throw away those little stems. Put them somewhere safe where they can go and hatch out. Don't put them in a garbage bag or anything like that. So all those wonderful pollinators can emerge when it warms up. So we're looking for signs of spring. We're going to continue talking to you about some of these topics over the next few weeks. If you have any signs of spring, I know it's been a really cold week for most of us, and we're just ready for some warmer weather and some signs of spring. But if you have some signs of spring, I want to see pictures. So please post in the comments below. If you like this video, please let us know that. Share with your friends. Likes and comments are always appreciated, and we'll see you next time.